Regulators! Mount up!
Hey everybody, Lewis here, Rshackbbq and other things. Thank you for stopping by and watching my channel. This video is going to actually be a series of videos that I'm going to do. This will be part one, and what this series is going to be is about a rack of ribs. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to do rack of ribs on a few different cookers. I'm going to do one on a true offset wood burning cooker, one on a pellet grill, one on a Weber Smoky Mountain, and maybe on a Weber kettle, and we'll just compare the differences, you know, like wood versus pellets versus charcoal versus the different cooks. Now the way I'm going to do this is I'm going to do a video today on just an offset style cooker. I'm going to talk about the cooker, how to set it up, how it works, and how I run it. We're going to time it. We're going to also how often I have to add wood during this cook, and then we will do a final taste test once they're done. And then, you know, the next video will be like on the pellet grill. Go through the same things, how a pellet grill works, how the how often do you have to load pellets, how well does it control temp, and then also taste the flavor. And then, you know, we'll go into the charcoal grills and do that the same way. I'm going to use St. Louis style cut ribs for this. I'm going to season them the same way each and every time that I do a video, and so that'll all be done basically the same. It's just a comparison of the different cooks and what I think of the flavors. So video one, like I said, is going to be on the Lonestar offset cooker. I'm not going to go in and show you how I prepare the ribs. They're already cut St. Louis style. All I'm going to do is like remove the membrane, and I add mustard as my binder, add my seasonings, and then let them sweat in for a half hour while I get the cooker up to temp. And then once the cooker's up to temp, I'm going to put them on here, and then we'll just monitor how often I add wood, how I check to see where I want to either wrap or not wrap. Then we'll add maybe some barbecue sauce and chill that too, and then do a final taste. Alright, so this is my 20 by 42 Lonestar Grills offset wood burning cooker. Now what you basically have, you have your firebox over here, and then you have your cook chamber here. This particular one, it's got a front shelf, and you know, it's got a rack on the bottom to hold your wood. I've had, when I bought this, I had their propane assist igniter port put in. I also have a port on the side for probes and things like that. So let's talk about the cook chamber. In this case, it has two racks. You got your smokestack over here. I'm going to go ahead and open that up now. You want to open that all the way up to the very beginning once you get it going. Now let's come in here, and in this one you see I've got two racks in it. Now for a rack of rib, I'm just going to use the bottom one. Typically in an offset, your heat is coming up from this side, and it's actually going up over the top, and then it's rolling back down. So generally your upper portion is a little bit 10-20 degrees warmer than your bottom portion. Just keep that in mind if you're using this. Evenly, you know, it's pretty even across. You can put tuning plates in there, which kind of deflects that heat to run all the way across and then back out. But in this particular style, I don't want to do that. I want it to be able to come up and run across, back down, and out the stack. I also like to run a water pan, which I have down in there. It's just a aluminum disposable pan. I put water in. I like it close to the fire pit. That way when the heat is coming up, it's kind of taking that heat and cooling it down just a little bit, creating a moisture, and it kind of evaporates across. Doesn't add a whole lot of moisture to the environment, but I just feel like it adds a little bit, enough that I like to run water in my cooks. So this is the cook chamber here. Now let's look at the firebox. Okay, this particular model, you have your damper or your vent right here. And what this does is, this is, once you get the fire going, it creates that draw where it sucks all the heat into the smoke chamber and out the stack. Sometimes you see where they have vents on the side, but ideally you want your draft coming straight in so it's sucking it towards the cook chamber. Let's go ahead and open it up here. So as you can see in here, I've got my spent coals there, and I'll still use those up. You got your little fire pit right in this area, and then you build your fire with wood right here. Now what I like to do is I like to get my fire going with briquettes, have a couple pieces of wood in here, and then once those briquettes get the wood going, I run strictly wood from that point on. So what I need to do is get my initial bed ready for my fire, and I'll show you how I do that. Usually this is how I start out each of my fires. I have new splits on each side, and then I have my spent or using up the old coals right here in the middle. Then what I do, once I get my fresh coals lit, I dump them right here. Then I'll take another split of wood and I'll set it across it like this and let that control my fire. What I will do is I'll add about a half a chimney full of coals, briquettes in here, and then like this, and I'll let this come up to about 250, and I'll start adjusting the damper to hold it there at 250. That's where I like to run my ribs at, 250 degrees. And if I need to add another split, I just keep piling them on top here if I want it to run a little hotter. And I'll rotate those around as they burn down. Now, what you'll see here is, for this size of cooker, this is the diameter. It's about a, I would say maybe 2 inch by 2 inch, and maybe 10 inches, 10 to 12 inches long is the sizes split that I use in here. And that's about all you need. Size wise, you put in a big log and it's going to run hot. So I control it basically with these sizes of splits in this size of cooker, and it runs beautiful. All right, let me get the fire going and we'll go from there. So, door. You can either dump it from the top if you wanted to. What I like to do is very carefully, I do this guy on fire here. I normally do this with briquettes, so I don't have quite the sparkage as we have here. I got my spit here, get that on there, and we'll let this fire warm up. Okay, typically when you get your fire first going with the charcoal, get those logs going, those splits, it does produce a lot of smoke. But in about 10 minutes, when that thing finally gets those logs going pretty well and the fire has burned itself down a little bit as far as the coals go, this will completely disappear and you won't see it anymore. So you got to let it get up through that first initial stage, come up to temp, and then it will self-regulate itself. And then we just add a spit, a little bit of smoke, and then from then on it's just a clean burn. So, okay, as you can see now, you don't have the smoke coming out of the stack like we did have. The grill is about, it says 225, 230. It's coming up a little bit, so I closed the damper back down. It's been about 40 minutes since I lit the coals and dumped them in the firebox. In that time, I went ahead and got our rack of ribs ready. As you can see here, got them all seasoned up. Like I said, I did a mustard binder, and then I used an all-purpose barbecue dry rub on there, and then I came over the top with Country Fried Barbecue's Competition Rib Rub. This guy has won a lot of comps with this, and we'll give it a try. So, see, we're already up to 250. Let's go ahead and open this up. I'm going to put this on the bottom rack, so we'll pull this out a little bit. Slide our ribs on there. Let's get them in position. So I'm going to set them right in the middle, and run them lengthwise here. Let's go ahead and get this closed up. Got our water pan going. Let's go ahead and close her up, like so. So now what we're going to do is we'll just kind of monitor the temp here for a little bit, see where we're sitting, make adjustments with the damper on the intake, not on the outtake. I usually like to run my outtake wide open, unless I get a really hot fire, then I start choking it down a little bit. But at this time, we're going to leave that where it is, control the intake, and let this just settle in where it wants to settle in. Like I said, I'm looking for 250 is where I want to sit at. So we'll just let it go there. Basically, I'm going to let it go of this for 2 hours. I'll come out in about a half hour, I'll spritz them, and then come out in another half hour, spritz them again, kind of start probing to see if they're tender at all. Then watch the color, looking for that nice mahogany kind of color. Make sure that the rubs are setting and they're not going to chip off or flake off. And then from there on, it's that half hour, I'll come out and check them again and determine if I need to wrap them at that time, or if I need to let them go for that extra half hour by checking the bone pull back and the color and the tenderness. So we'll watch this temp and get it where we want it, and we'll go from there. Okay, we're about 45 minutes in. I went a little longer than I was planning on. Let's first check. Now on this one, I like it because I can check the fire by just opening this up rather than opening the door. So we're just going to give it a quick check. Oh yeah, we just have coals in there. So it's time to put another spit or split, as you like, some people like to say. There's a nice split right there. Get it up. Let's go ahead and look at our ribs. Starting to look really, really good. I'm going to bring you in close here so you can take a quick look at them. There you are. So what we're going to do is we're just going to spritz them, and we'll let them go another 45 minutes or so. So let me get my spritzer. Quick spritz. You can see we're starting to have a little separation there of the fats pulling back on it, rendering down a little bit of bone pull, like this, and we will close it up. Alright. So at this point, you notice really very little smoke coming out. We've got a good fire going, so we'll just keep it rolling. We're back out here. You can see we're sitting right at 250. Let's take a look at the firebox, see if we need to put another split. And as you can see, we definitely needed to get another split on it. So let's do that real quick. see if we can get our scope back up here. Alright, now I'm going to check the ribs. Picking up our temp probes to see where we're at. Starting to get there. I'm not really seeing too much bone, much more bone pullback. So we're almost there. Rub is definitely set on it. Almost to the color that I'm looking for. Give a quick spritz here. So what we're going to do is we're actually just going to go ahead and let these go another half hour. See what they look like then before we wrap them. But they're looking beautiful. A nice bend to them. Take this, put it back up. You can see that our log, just by the smoke here, our splits have taken off. Get that closed up. Okay, it's been a half hour more. Let me check my fire real quick. Oh yeah, be about out of log there, out of split. So I'm going to go ahead and get, I'm going to get a couple of these smaller ones going on it here. Get our coal bed back up. Keep this open a little bit. Alright, so definitely time to get these wrapped and get you set up over there so you can see how I do that real quick, and we'll get these wrapped. So basically, that's very similar right now to what's called the 3-2-1 method. And I use that pretty much on all my ribs, but I usually do the first part 2 hours, check them, and then kind of make a determination if I'm going to go half hour or another hour on the smoker. In this case, I just went another half hour. Right now, the fuel or the splits, you know the size of the splits I'm using, it is running probably at this temp 250, a new split every half hour to 45 minutes. So we now had them on for 2.5 hours. We just got them wrapped. What we're going to do at this point, we're going to let them go another hour. Won't even touch them. Won't even come out. Well, I'll come out in a half hour, check the fire, make sure it's still good, probably add another split. But I'm not going to open up the cook chamber. We're going to leave them wrapped for an hour, then we're going to come out and probe them. And if they're starting to feel very tender, then we'll know we're at where we're at. We'll open them up, we'll look at the bone pullback, look at the color, and go from there. Basically what you're doing with the foil and the vinegar is this is almost like speeding up the cook. You're actually almost in a kind of a way of steaming those ribs at this point. You've got the color, now you just need to get the internal cut, temp and cook done. So basically right now all you're doing is steaming them by wrapping them up in foil. So we'll let that go for an hour and we'll come out and check them. After that hour, if they're good, we'll unwrap them. We may, I don't know, we might not even put any barbecue sauce on these. But what we'll do is we'll check them and just make a determination then, see if we want barbecue sauce. I'm almost feeling like I don't want to put barbecue sauce on these. So we'll check back in an hour. So I came out a half hour ago, I put another split of wood on the old fire. Right now it's reading about 260, 270 right in there. There's our ribs. Let's take a quick look in here. We could probably put another one on at this time. So, like I said, about every half hour we need to put another split on there. Oh, let's find a good one. You don't want to go too big on this one because we're the home stretch. So, let's get this one. Put it on there. Let the door open for a minute to let it vent. What I got my quick read here. And what we're going to do, Greg, let's go ahead and open it up. Let's pull it out. And what we're going to do is we're just going to check for tenderness. And you can see that's pretty much going right through them. A little bit of pullback. We're looking at the internal temp. Right now we're about 185 right there. Get down there to meat. 187 down here. And down here at the end we'll probably keep hitting bone. So yeah, see we're like at 196 at this end. That's the thin end. So these are very close to getting done here. Nice and tender, just the way I like it pulled. Let's go ahead and close it up. Let's go ahead and close this up. What I'm going to do is I like my ribs to be a bite through, not fall off the bone style. I like a nice bite and a gentle pull, and it comes right off the bone. So that is generally right around where we're at, 185 up to 200, just by probing it and seeing how tender it is. Now a lot of people say it should be so tender that it's like sticking it through a cube of warm butter. I personally say that's fall off the bone style. I like to say when you stick this in there and it feels like it's going into a stick of butter that's freshly out of the fridge. It still goes fairly easy. You can feel just a little bit of tension as it goes through that butter and back out. That's what I like. And that's where these ribs are. So we are right at that point. Okay, so it's been another 15 minutes and it's time to get these off of there. These gloves over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull that rack out and I'm basically going to unwrap them. And I'm going to see how that rack looks of ribs, see how that rack of ribs look like. And set them back on this rack. So, first thing we want to do is get this first rack undone. And ever so carefully, see that it's probably snapped right apart. See if I can do this. There we go. Yeah. Look at that rack of ribs right there. It looks so good. Set them up there. And foil on it. Got a little bit of pull back there. It's looking really good. Got a nice bend to it. Those are like perfect. So what I want to talk about is how do you take care of your offset when you're done with a cook? Well, what I recommend you do is, it's a little warm over there. Once this thing is down, I would say once it gets down to about 150, to where you can almost touch it, then you want to start wiping it down. And you want to wipe it down with white mineral oil. This is the best stuff. This will season it and keep it looking nice and clean and will help prevent rust. You especially want to get the firebox area all around it, since that's where most of the heat is. You can do up here and around and everything. Make sure you get underneath. That's where most of your offsets rust out, up underneath, because all the heat and everything is sitting there and it gets neglected. Anyhow, so right now we've got our ribs off. We're going to let them rest for 15 minutes and we'll cut into them. At that time we'll be in the house. So let's get it all set up in there. All right, so our ribs have been resting here for 15 minutes or so. So let's get them out and see what we got. They smell really, really good. Pour it all the way. And unwrap them. Look at those babies. That make you hungry or what? All right, here's our finished ribs. They look so good. Let me just take a bite of it, see what it tastes. So you see there? Good clean bite right through it. Wow. Look at that. Perfect. Just the way I want it. Got spice on there, those seasonings. That's incredibly good. One seasoning had a little bit of spice to it. The other one has a sweet. It's just, these have no sauce on them and they don't need any sauce. They're that good. Wow. That is a good rib. All right, I'll stop eating. All right, so let's talk about how that offset ran. You saw how I did it. I went in and I put the 2 pieces of wood on each side, about 2 inches by 2 inches by about 12 inches long, is usually what I split them to. Then I got my half a chimney full of charcoal going. This time I used lump. Normally I use briquettes. Get that going. And then I dumped it right down the middle in between those 2 splits. And then I took 2 more splits and I set them up on top of that. And on this particular, this Lonestar, that sat at right about 250 to 275. While I was trying to come up to temp is when I came in and I seasoned the ribs. You know, I took the membrane off it and I seasoned them up with that all-purpose barbecue rub and then the chicken fried rib rub on top of that. After they were seasoned, I just let them sit on the counter and sweat while the smoker came all the way up to temp. Once it got up to that 250 to 275 range, I took the ribs out there and I put them on the center rack. I put them in the center of the bottom rack. I like to run a water pan, so I had a water pan down in the belly of the smoke chamber and put the ribs on there. I let them go for an hour. At a half-hour mark, I went out and I checked the fire. I had to add another split. So every half hour, I had to add at least 1 to 2 splits, depending on how I felt. But most of the time, it was just 1 split. After that first half hour, I went back out a half hour later, so we're 1 hour in. I spritzed them with just straight up water. Put another log on the old fire, let them go for another half hour. Put another log on the fire. Then went out and checked them at the 2 hour mark. I started seeing where they were at. Tenderness, how well the bark had set on the ribs, and was looking at the color. They weren't quite right to where I wanted them. So I let them go for another half hour. After that half hour, I went out, put a split on the fire. I actually put 2 on at that time. And I got my foil wrap ready with the, can't believe it's butter, brown sugar, and a little bit of apple cider vinegar. Put the ribs on there, used that little cool thumb grinder, and added some more seasoning, all-purpose barbecue seasoning on the ribs, wrapped them up double foil, and stuck them back on there. Now the grill itself was running right there at the 250 mark this whole time, in between 250 and 275. And that's the important part. You got to maintain your pit temp, and you do that by just monitoring it. On an offset, it's about every half hour. From my big rig, my 500-gallon rig, to any backyard offset style cooker, you're going to expect to have to add more fuel about every half hour. So after I wrapped them, basically I let them go for 1 hour, and then I went out and probed them for tenderness. They were pretty tender. They were almost to the point that I wanted them to be at. At that point, I went ahead and determined I'm going to let them go for another half hour. I let them go for another half hour and went out, and this is what we got. Now, after that half hour is up, you saw what I did. I took them out, and at that point, you either want to start saucing them or you want to wrap them back up and let them just sit. By unwrapping them, what you're doing is venting and kind of stopping that cooking procedure. And by letting them sit, all the moisture and everything from that bath that you made that it was sitting in for steaming kind of absorbs back into it. So after you get that done, you let them sit for 15-20 minutes and you start slicing them up. Now, there you go. Perfect. Perfect looking ribs. What I'm going to do is I'm going to finish cutting these up, and then we're going to plate them up and eat them. That's the best part anyways. So like I always say, you can do this too. It's not that hard. Stay tuned for the second video in this series, where I will probably do a rack, let's say on a pellet grill, and let you know what I think between this and the pellet grill. Until next time, my friends, grill.